Sorry, last thing, I'm going to introduce myself or you are going to introduce me?
I think you can. I'll just turn it
Okay,
over
I will
to you.
be short as possible. Okay,
Yeah, I
okay,
didn't think you'd
good.
read everything. Okay. Hmm.
Only one,
Only one.
but it has been advertised.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And there's over 50 people registered, so I don't. Here we go. Hello, we're just waiting for a few more people to join before we get started. So Giorgio, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can try.
Yeah. You can record it.
But you are going to share your screen and then it passes to me, or I need to move the slide.
I can share and then pass
So,
to you. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Let's do it that way.
Okay. Stefano's having trouble getting in.
I see only one participant and one in the waiting room, but
That's what I see as well. Let's just wait a couple more minutes and then just go ahead and get started. That way we'll at least have it recorded.
So in any case, it's a register. So I suppose the intent is also to make this available online.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do that.
Stefano cannot get in.
Should I accept him?
Yeah, I've been doing it and it's not working. You can try.
Okay, now disappear.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I think let's consider that it is a registration session.
Yeah.
Nothing online.
Exactly. Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to the fourth Hospitals on Fire XiA webinar titled Implementing the EU Lab Report in Your Hospital. Before we begin, just a few words about Hospitals on Fire. So Hospitals on FHIR is a European community of practice dedicated to advancing the adoption of HL7 FHIR and interoperability standards in hospitals and healthcare organizations. Through collaboration, knowledge sharing, webinars, workshops, and real-world implementation experiences, the community supports improving interoperability, readiness, and preparing for initiatives such as the European Health Data Space. Currently, Hospitals on FHIR has 125 hospitals and healthcare providers as members, 7 IT companies, and is present in 14 countries. This is, I mentioned that this is done in collaboration between HOF and XiA, and XiA is a European Erasmus project helping healthcare professionals, IT teams, universities, and digital health companies prepare for the European health data space. The goal is simple, build the skills Europe needs to make the EHDS work in practice. It's also related to Pack4Skills, which is another organization, another initiative across Europe. And Pack4Skills is an umbrella skills ecosystem, and it's a flagship action of the European skills agenda. The aim is to support public and private organizations with upskilling and reskilling so they can thrive through the green and digital transitions. Pack4Skills, XiA, and the XiA projects connect around education in the areas of digital health skills, interoperability, training, and workforce upskilling. So this webinar is part of an ongoing series on implementing the EU Lab report, and I mentioned that it's a collaborative project. And the idea is to help hospitals better understand the practical steps needed to implement the European interoperability standards. And we started this in February, and this is the 4th webinar. The next one coming up will be on logical models, and that'll be on June 25th. So keep an eye out for that. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Hold any questions you might have until the very end. Please, you're free to enter them in the Q&A if you have any, and we'll be happy to address them at the end of the webinar. So with that, I hand it over to you, Giorgio.
Thank you, Rhonda, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me try to share my screen and let me know if you're able to see before proceeding.
Looks good.
Is there? I hope so. So let me introduce myself. I'm Giorgio Cangioli. I'm a consultant, and I've been involved since a long time in the standardization activity and in European health services. The scope of that short webinar is try to understand what a FHIR implementation guide is, and how it may support consistent implementation of FHIR specification, to understand what is used for, how these profiles are constrained in order to enable the usage of the implementation guide, how to read it, and how to better understand the computable nature of the FHIR AG. So let's start from the reason why we have implementation guide. If you think to any good base standard as HL7 FHIR is, obviously it has to be designed in order to be able to support and provide a solution for different kind of domain, implementation context and jurisdiction. And for doing that, obviously, need to be enough generic and reusable and flexible. But when you want to apply the base standard to your specific context of use, obviously, you need to constrain or extend or define rule describing how the base standard need to be used for your purposes. And this is what usually is called profiling. With profiling, we mean any way to specify how a specific standard should be used in a given context. It might be related to the selection of specific resources or data element, could constrain cardinality, specify what are the terminology that has to be used, and so on and so forth. If you look mainly to the FHIR world, you can just do that just implementing the FHIR standard for your context. But it's clear that if you do that, you have no documentation of what should be done, and nor you also lose validation capability because you are not able to formalize what you are doing, accepting a generic check against the base FHIR standard. So the FHIR implementation guide is a way to formalize all these rules. So an implementation guide, as mentioned before, explain how to use or should we use the HL7 FHIR standard to solve a particular problem. It may include guideline, it may include example, rule, and define how the specific FHIR resource profile could be managed and shared. Why it is important? It's important because not only provide guidance to the implementer, but also act as a bridge between the functional and the technical team if the FHIR AG is well designed, because it also helps to understand how the requirements are met, defining also best practice and technical specification for the adoption of FHIR. But let's see a little bit more in depth how FHIR works. You know that probably everything in FHIR is a resource. So how the rule that I mentioned before are actually realized. This is done by using some, let's say, specific resource in FHIR. Typically, we refer to them as conformance resources. And example of that, maybe you can see in some guide, those resources mentioned. You have, for example, structural definition that are used for defining structural rule, what are the elements, the cardinality, if there are extension apply, and so on. Or you can see value set that just provide a list of code that need to be used in specific contexts, or capability statement that describe what is the behavior of a specific interface. These are not the only one. You have search a parameter to define the parameter that you can use for search and many other. But all of them is the way in FHIR the rule are specified. All those conformance resources can be, let's say, refer a group inside the implementation guide, and also the implementation guide is in FHIR resource. However, it's quite clear that human user rarely is hard for us to go open a JSON file and go through the implementation guide resource to understand what the guide is referring to. That's the reason why, in reality, when we think to the implementation guide, as I mentioned, a set of rules describing how the FHIR should be used for a specific problem, you always have a human readable representation of those rules and a formal computable resource. Let's look to the first part. So the part of the human readable part. As mentioned before, technically, a FHIR implementation guide is a resource that acts as a grouper, and the way it might be represented can change depending on the tool that are used to represent that. So I put here two examples, one get from the simplifier tool, the other the typical guides that are produced by the HL7 FHIR publisher. What is important is that independently the way it is represented, the content doesn't change among the implementation guide. What you can find inside, obviously the content that you can find inside the implementation guide can change depending on the type of the guide. It might be a terminology package, or it could be a content-only spec, or an API specification. But in general, you often find an introductive page, some pages describe the context, the purpose, if there are design approach. If apply, you may have some description of the functional requirement, how those requirements are realized, and then the true conformance resource that describe how FHIR need to be used with associated example. Let me use as an example the EU Base and Core FHIR AG. So you have, let me skip the home page. You have an introductive page in which base and core profile are introduced and explained. Then you have a functional profile with logical model, and then the way the logical model are remapped into FHIR, and then in the artifact list, and this is the thing that you can find almost in all the FHIR AG, you have the summary of all the artifacts that are defined, all the conformance resources that are defined for that guide. You can often see also other supporting information, like if there are open issue, a download page for downloading the example or the package, dependency, and other information related to the guide itself. But let's go a little bit and let's see in practice how a FHIR AG is. Let me move to real. So if you go, for example, to HL7.eu/FHIR, you can find here all the guide that have been published by HL7 Europe. And if you click medical test result, you see the latest laboratory IG published. As I mentioned, also in that case, there are some introductive information. Here there are more pages because there are more information that are provided about the background. Also, the functional level include not only the logical model, but also information about the status need to be managed for lab result and so on. And then you have the mapping page that describes how the different model used are remapping to the profile with a description of the element by element mapping from the model to the profile. And then, as I mentioned, you have the artifact page. And here you see here structure, resource profile. These actually describe what are the resource in FHIR that have been specialized for the purpose of the lab report. And for example, you have, this is the composition profile. You just say that the composition that is described here specialize the EU core composition. And if you click, you can go and see the rule that apply for that EU core composition. Then you have a list of the constraints that are applied for the element in terms of cardinality, in terms of data type use, and you can see also for specific coded element that, for example, the composition type that describes the document type need to be as a specific vocabulary binding with the defined value set, in that case with a single code, but it describes not only the type of binding, but also the type of the strength of the binding. So if the code is preferably extracted from that value set or have to be extracted, in that case required from that value set. And then you may find other constraints like invariant or highlighting some functional rule. For example, if you are a specific actor, then you need to be able to or display or be able to populate specific element. And these are called obligations. Sometimes people confuse, you see here more tabs. Here you have the differential table. The differential table just specify what are the differences between that profile and the parent profile or the parent resource. The key element table just group together the rules that are defined for that specific case and those that are inherit from the parent resource. Obviously, this is just a quick and high-level overview of how to read a FHIR AG, but I hope we may have in the future opportunity to go more in depth. So let's come back to the other. So I put here some other example of implementation guide. For example, the IPA is a guide that describes the API specification for the patient access, or there's an example here of an implementation guide that is just a package of value set used for the purpose of the cross-border specification. Europe. There is an example of an implementation guide that just define extension, not actual profile, and another that is an implementation guide that describe only logical model. If you have time at the end, maybe you can go more in depth in that. I mentioned before the double nature. So the implementation guide are computable thing. Obviously, what we are used to consume is the human reviewable part, but why the formal computable resource is relevant. As mentioned before, all the conformance resource and the implementation guide, including also the descriptive page, are referred in the implementation guide, and all of them are packaged into a zip tar that usually is identified as package.tgz. May have also some sub-package specialized per FHIR version, depending on the type of the guide, but this is usually what you find. And this is mainly used for reusing those information that you can find. For example, I define a value set and I want to reuse that value set in another package. I just get the package and just refer to a conformance resource that is defined in a specific IG. Or for helping the software development, and for sure is essential for all the validation purposes. When you publish a guide, usually you are expected to publish that guide, also to register that guide in the FHIR package registry. And this is done in order that everyone in the world can discover, reuse, and refer a package that has been made available through that means. So if there is a package that is developed by XiA Europe, then you can get it, download from the registry, and reuse the artifacts that are there, or as they are, or, for example, by specializing in your specific context. That is also important because rarely an implementation guide standalone usually has a lot of references to other specification, and these, as I mentioned, are managed through package dependencies. So you can say this IG, this implementation guide, depends on those other implementation guide. And as I mentioned before, this is possible because all of them are published and made available through the FHIR package registry. This is an example, for example, for the European ecosystem of FHIR in which we have an extension package that is used by the core package that describes the common reusable building block. And then you have specialized domain-specific IG that reuse the content that is in the base and in the extension. In the reality, the dependencies are wider because we are also reusing assets that are defined in global standard, global IG. And this also provide a means to, as mentioned before, to define common rule. And this is the design, how the European specifications are currently designed. You have common rules that are at the European level. They cross-border specialize those rules, and those rules can be reused for national purposes. All those dependencies are documented in the IG. If you go into the dependency page, you can see the list of the packages that are specifically used. For example, in lab report, we are reusing the specific version of the base. The dependencies are specific to a specific version of the package. So, just to conclude before getting some question, FHIR IG is the means that is used for make XiA usable in real-world project because this allows to reduce ambiguity and risk. And typically, there are community-driven tools that help the interoperability and the sharing of information and reuse initiative like the health data space. The floor back to you, and if there is a specific question or if you want to go more in detail in some specific aspect, I'm glad to do it.
Great. Thank you very much, Giorgio. So if there's anybody that wants to pose a question, I think you just take yourself off mute and ask the question. If not, I have a question we can start with. Let me start, and the others can join in if they like. So, Giorgio, thanks very much for your presentation. What are the most common mistakes organizations make when they start working with the FHIR implementation guide, particularly for the EU lab report?
Sorry, I missed your first
Okay.
term.
What-
Yeah, I missed what you asked for. Yeah.
No problem. What are the most common mistakes that organizations make when they start working on implementing a FHIR implementation guide? Are there a few that we can highlight?
There are several, but as I mentioned before, the first mistake could be just start doing things without looking what is already around. So the first thing when you start any FHIR specific project is see what other have already done, evaluate them, and then decide if and how to use this material instead of reinventing everything from scratch. The other mistake is just implementing. Is now is less common, but at the beginning was really common that people just took the FHIR specification and just implemented. It works. It works if you have in a very close environment, but you know better than me that now you never work in a closed environment. At a certain point in time, your information needs to flow outside your closed environment. And so having the way to share what are the rules that you apply in your context is relevant.
That makes perfect sense. You know, they can also reach out and join Hospitals on FHIR now that I think of it, because there's a community of people who are trying to do the same thing. So might not be a bad idea to also join HOF as well. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Well, I have one more. Looking ahead, what role do you see FHIR? Can you hear me?
I see. Yes, I see one hands up from.
Okay, good.
Please, if there are some questions from the audience.
Perfect. Just take yourself off mute. Or Ahmed, did you have a question? I guess not. Okay.
Okay, you should be able now to unmute, Ahmed. Your mic is enabled.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Now it's possible to talk. It wasn't before.
Okay.
We were not allowed to. I was just going to ask a question about the validation of the FHIR profile. I see that there's one HL7 FHIR validator for the scheme.
Yeah.
But it's not maintained, and it's a bit outdated. I was going to ask if are there any initiatives on working out a new validator for the R5?
Oh, I mean that not sure to follow what you are saying because the FHIR validator is continually maintained updated. If you are referring to that, it is included in the API core part. So yes. I don't know if you are referring to the fact that sometimes there is a mismatch between the latest version of the Java validator and what is actually available in the distribution of the API server. Sometimes are not in sync, but they should. But I haven't seen any specific constraint or delay in using the validator, using RISC-V or other. It's just a matter of what you are going to refer as an implementation guide or as package to validate thing. But maybe you are referring to something more specific.
No, that actually answered my question, because I've just recently started experimenting with it, and then there is some of this mismatching occurring. So that I assumed it was about this outdated version or not maintenance.
Yeah, and there is consider also now one thing that sometime if you are only looking to the output of the log of the validator, you can see apparently for the same validator, because all of them use the same API validator, you can see very different outcome, so very different log. But this depends of which version of the validator you are taking. It depends of the option that you're using for running the validator. So I make a presentation 2 days ago, just showing how using the same profile, using the same example, just changing a little bit the configuration of the validator, you can have a lot of error, no error, or so. And this need to be understood from who evaluate the log of the validator. So, but this is another topic.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So we're at time. So I guess with that, we'll close the webinar. So I'd like to say thanks to all of you who are able to join, and I hope you found today's session useful. And join us for the 5th webinar, which will be on a Thursday, June 25th at 15 Central European Time. So have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.